two, one, two, one, two, one, two.
Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue on with the 31 days of cop films and gangster films from the year 1970 to the present. And so that's one video discussion per day over the course of the next 31 days for the cop film genre, and then also one video per day for the gangster film genre. And so now we are at what I understand is day 2. And so for today and this video, let us focus in on the police film genre aspect of this. And for that, I have selected a very special film. I regard it as being very special, and I know that I am part of a large crowd of people who feel that way, who feel very strongly about this incredible work, which is so funny, so shocking, and so filled to the brim with ideas, with set pieces, with clever plot construction upon plot construction, as well as a combination of wonderful visuals that are so beautiful, so poetic, and so serene, that also provide a type of either gateway or poetic contradiction in terms of the type of antics and the type of chaos and the type of violence that is in store in terms of the way that the plot develops from A to B to C to D, all the way to its conclusion. And at the center of the proceedings, my dear friends, are some brilliantly rendered characters upon their creation and upon their effectuation and upon their representation in this work. We see that this is a film that is developed by talented, genius filmmaker artists, both in front of the camera and behind. And so here I'm speaking about a work from 1996. And this is from the filmmakers Joel Cohen and Ethan Cohen. Now, it's credited as being produced by Ethan Cohen, written by Ethan Cohen and Joel Cohen, directed by Joel Cohen. And we have among the brilliant cast people like Frances McDormand and William H. Macy and Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare and others. We have the wonderful camera work by Roger Deakins and the great music by Carter Burwell, and all the elements that combine to form this magnificent epic film, crime drama to the max. I'm speaking, of course, of this film, which is Fargo. Fargo is one of those landmark moments, I think, for a lot of people when we're talking about the trajectory of American cinema in the 1990s. And when this came up, when it did, it was like a bolt of lightning in many ways. It was a critical success. I mean, I remember when this came out, and that great movie critics show, which is called Siskel and Ebert, Gene Siskel and Robert Ebert, that great combination. They had a television show where they would review films from that particular week. And when Fargo came up, I just was so taken aback as to how much they loved this film. And that was an example of just how greatly and how deeply this film really caught the attention of many people in terms of professional film critics and also audiences. And I was among those film audiences that went to see this in the theater, and it was a very funny film. It was a very shocking film. It was a film, or it is a film, which is about a type of crime or a series of crimes that take place, or the planning of various crimes that are taking place, all for the benefit of certain characters. Shall we call them villains? Shall we call them antagonists? I mean, I hesitate to use the word villain villains, because although we see characters doing some really terrible things, some really bad things for the furtherance of their own, say, goals or gains or motives or greed, whatever the case might be, however one as a viewer interprets it, we still find a type of weird or twisted or even oddly warming and touching and sympathetic way in which we can still regard a lot of these characters that still unabashedly and definitely are doing things that are very wrong, very bad, and in fact, in terms of the screen violence in this film, very violent indeed. So this is a world that is cold, that is maybe desolate, that is also very much has the potential for being splattered with a lot of bloodshed indeed. Now, that is not the only thing that's going on here, because we also have, on the other side of the coin, a number of characters that are trying their best, not just to push back against the elements of violence and danger and chaos in the world that we see in Fargo, in this film Fargo, but we also see not just the pushback, but also the attempts and endeavors by which these so-called heroes of the film are trying to do good and to bring about justice, and also to protect the innocent, as it were. And so this is the landscape of crime and law enforcement that is at play here in this intriguing, wonderful, exciting work that is Fargo. Now, what we have here too is, as I say, a number of elements that are combined to form this magnificent and quite sharply shocking and very witty and sly work. One of such those elements is, of course, the performances. Now, we have here a combination of brilliant performances. For example, we have the great character, Jerry Lundegaard, who is portrayed by William H. Macy, who is one of those great characters of the ages in terms of not just 90s crime saga films, but also, late 20th century American cinema for that matter. I mean, his performance is electrifying and funny, and he is both very clever and also very much a type of, say, down and out character who is against all odds, is trying to do what he feels he needs to do in order to essentially survive. And when his back is up against the wall, he will basically do anything it takes. And so that is a really quite a performance indeed. And I remember, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but I just remember, I refer to Siskel and Ebert, and there was a particular moment that was referred to in that show about a particular scene involving Jerry Lundegaard and trying to scrape frozen ice off of the windshield of a car, which seems like a very ordinary, almost mundane thing, but it turns into this huge character moment almost out of nowhere, which is a brilliant thing. So that's an example of where you could have magic that appears in these seemingly ordinary character moments that also at the same time reveal so much about who it is that we are dealing with as viewers watching this film. And that's an example. So that's one of the great characters here. And then on the other side of the coin, we have the Frances McDormand character, Marge Gunderson, who is the one of the anchors of this film in terms of the idea of righteousness and the idea of almost a justice slash retribution, the idea of law enforcement that is always paying attention to the particular details of a particular inquiry or investigation, while at the same time always remaining true to who it is that she is and what it is that she feels she is about in terms of not just her job and her profession and how she treats other people, which is always with a sense of direct warmth and sincerity, but it's not a type of naivete. As on the other hand, she is firm and strong when she needs to be, but she's also very charming and affable as well on the professional front. But that's not the only thing we see of the character of Marge. We also see the wonderful peace that is associated with her and her private life and her life at home, and what it is that she is interested in, what it is that the people that she is close to and the people that she loves, what it is that they are interested in as well. So we have this beautiful portrait, if you will, of a character that is true and sincere and is willing to do what it takes in order to carry out what it is that she believes. And I think that's true for also for Jerry Lundegaard. That's also true for many of the other characters that we see and that we meet along the way here. So the characters and the way that they're portrayed, it is absolutely stellar. And then also we have the plot. You know, the plot is one that is one of these crime films that just builds seemingly from nothing, from these minor details, and they build and build and build, and it becomes so almost intricate that it becomes a point where all this buildup of little details, finite layers, then builds and builds and builds in this beautifully ornate plot construction, confectionery of the film. And then there comes a point which is what can be called the boiling point or the tipping point, when everything that has been built up to now is this huge, almost off-kilter, about to let loose in terms of its balance type of plot tower that is about to fall apart at any moment. And if and when it does, the chaos that ensues and the bloodshed that ensues, my goodness, stand back, because you're in for a lot of shocks and thrills indeed. And also a lot of laughs and a lot of chuckles as well, because there are so many doses of humor, and the humor is oftentimes set forth or portrayed in this type of a peculiar warmth of say a type of cinematic lens that is viewing the human condition in all of its forms, both positive and maybe not so positive. But there's always this type of quirky or idiosyncratic element that is portrayed, and it's not portrayed in a sense to say make fun of the characters or anything like that, I would suggest, but rather it is to show the true sincerity of what it is that they are into, what it is they are interested in, and what it is that they are focusing in on at a particular moment. From the outset, without any context, it might seem to the casual observer to be something that is odd or ludicrous, but when we get to know the situations and the people, we realize that there is a lot of sincerity and warmth along the way. And the brilliance of this film too is how that type of lens is being lent to not just say the quote-unquote protagonist characters of the film, but also potentially to the quote-unquote antagonist side as well. And it's a really brilliant rendering indeed. Then we have the great cinematic details and stylistic offerings of the film itself in terms of the way it's written and the dialogue, and I'll get to that momentarily, but also the visual element and the sound element. I mean, I mentioned Roger Deakins and the great cinematography. This is a beautiful landscape, a type of frozen tundra, if you will, the way that there is a type of faint line and there's white, and it all seems like something comes out of nothing. But that something that comes out of seemingly nothing grows and grows and grows, or the darkness, and then in the fog of the darkness, there's one speck of light that grows and grows and grows. That can be reminiscent or representative of hope, or it could represent something more sinister, or an element of danger, or something that builds from nothing and builds and builds and builds until it explodes with, I say, a splatter of bloodshed that falls right across that particular landscape or tundra. So it's captured with such of awe, visual awe, in terms of the camera work. And I also should mention the music. You know, Carl Burwell music is closely associated, with the work of the Coen brothers, and I love the soundtrack to Fargo. I remember I was looking for the soundtrack for the longest time, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, one day in a CD shop somewhere, I happened across the CD soundtrack, and they had the soundtrack, which was a combination. It was one CD, but it was a combination of tracks from Fargo and then also from another Coen Brothers film called Barton Fink. And so you had the combination of the two, which was a great find, and I love that soundtrack. And I still have that CD, in fact, on one of the shelves here, and so I listen to that occasionally. There's a particular way in which the melody or mood shifts, and then there is a particular scene involving a car park. and a drive through a car park. And the music that is played on that is one of my favorite tunes from any Coen Brothers work. I listen to that almost constantly whenever I revisit this particular soundtrack of Fargo. So and that's an example. That is a great example. And there's that almost triumphant, almost beautifully off kilter theme, which is again seemingly built coming out of it's something from seemingly nothing, but that's something that comes from nothing, built and built and built until it's this almost bombastic, brilliant, almost triumphant slash tragic theme. That is the opening theme to Fargo. So that's another great example, my dear friends. And then we go to, again, going back to the idea of how this film treats its characters and the wonderful way in which it seems to be earnestly portraying the idiosyncratic nature of a lot of these human elements of the characters. That also is due to the writing and the dialogue. And the dialogue is it's top notch. Absolutely top notch. I remember too, the script was also available in book form, and I remember buying the script. I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was the publisher, was it Faber and Faber, I think. And so I remember getting the script in book form and reading it. And I was just so fascinated by the language and the words, and the inflection and the way that the words seem to be rolling off the tongue, as it were, in terms of the performances. And there's a rhythm that was also being engaged with, which I thought was so fascinating as well. And I learned there's so many key words or key phrases that emerge. For instance, I didn't know. I mean, watching this film, I didn't know what the word unguent meant until I watched this film. Okay, so that's what that word means. Oh, that's very interesting. Or words like, or phrases like true coat, the significance of something like true coat, what that significance is, or other little details like that. And then the names too. I mentioned Marge Gunderson, Marge, Jerry Lundegaard, Carl Showalter, Geir Grimsrud, Norm. And the list goes on and on and on. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. And then there's some scenes too that are just classic scenes of dialogue and performance that is just brilliant to the max. There's one scene in particular involving Jerry. Again, I don't want to go into too many details. If you haven't seen it, please watch it if you can. If you're interested in this type of intense sort of crime thriller type of film that is, of course, quite intense and violent in some places, quite a lot of places perhaps, but also has this Coen Brothers type of aesthetic to it that is very stylized, very chic, very cool, and very earnest in terms of its cinematic approach, and how brilliant that is. This is a great example of that. There's one scene too, many scenes, but a scene involving a telephone call and the character of Jerry Lundegaard, and there's just that way of repeating a certain, say, word or phrase or name that is absolutely absolutely brilliant. So I don't want to go into too many more details lest I spoil it, so I will stop there. But again, just as a final closing remark, let me say that again, Fargo is brilliant. It's shocking. It's funny. I love it. But I know I'm not the only one. I know I am part of a large course of people, Coen Brothers fans, fans of these performers, these actors, fans of this type of genre film itself, fans of this type of film from 90s, mid 1990s American cinema, etc., etc. I mean, the list is potentially endless. And indeed, if you haven't seen Fargo, you are in for a real treat indeed. It is one of the great highlights of this genre from the 1990s. This is the film from Joel Coen and Ethan Coen. It is the film Fargo. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very, very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers. And it's hard to say no to that true coat. You know, that's a really good deal. Maybe, I'm not sure.